Welcome back to Out of the Rut. I'm X, riding solo today because, as always, Ron has his big boy job, so I'm flying solo. But I'm really excited about today's episode. I have a really cool friend, someone I've known for a long time, as most of the people we have on this podcast are. But someone, it's strange. I would explain my relationship with this person as like we're friends and we've been friendly almost like from afar. Like when we were younger and we had met, I wouldn't say we rolled within the same circle really, but we've always had like a respect and a friendship that has always sort of been there. And kind of over the time being apart, I feel like it's strangely have gotten into a deeper friendship. It's my my good friend Colton. Colton, say what up.
Hi, Xavier. And that is such a accurate way to portray our relationship.
Yeah, it's like we've known each other for damn near 20 years. And again, always friendly and always like the degrees of separation between the people that you and I have associated with always been small. But we weren't, I wouldn't say like on paper outside looking in where like people would describe us as friends. But I also I'm weird about friends. I don't have a very large pool of them. And strangely, as distant as our friendship has always been, it's a label that I've always tacked on to our relationship. It's like, oh yeah, Colton's my friend. But
I feel exactly the same.
Oh, thank you. Colton, met Colton when we were performers back in our small town in Kitsap County. Somewhere in his history that Colton will go into, transitioned into a little bit more of a political space, ran for state representative, works in politics now. So I'm very excited to go into that and all of the highs and lows in between. But Colton, if you have no other objections, you ready to jump into this bad boy?
Oh, I am so ready to jump into the highs and lows.
All right. And I will preface this, listeners, that Colton and I had been talking already for an hour before this recording started. So we're going to rehash some of these stories that we talked about because I have no self-control and I just love talking. But so we'll start from the beginning again, Colton. What point? So just talk a little bit about what you do currently in the political space. What is your current role?
Yeah. So I have worked now for the last 6 years for the state. Doing mostly legislative and policy work. So I've jumped around to a couple of agencies, initially kind of had my background in healthcare and was doing health policy, mostly focused on substance use disorder, and those who were incarcerated, helping to restore Medicaid payments to those who were incarcerated prior to release. And then I shifted gears and I've been kind of in the traffic safety realm for the last about 4 years now. Which is quite a contrast, but interesting work nonetheless.
Honestly, I'm kind of excited to talk to you about it because I know very little about politics. Like I know what I read or I know like what I research like online or whatever, but like as far as like the ins and outs of how politics works, I know very little about. So I'm very excited to talk with you about it.
Yes, I'm very excited as well.
All right. So let's start from the beginning. What motivated you into the political spectrum of things initially?
Yeah. So, thank you again for having this conversation with me today. I'm so glad that we get to catch up. And yes, I am very much a talker as well. So I completely understand. Of course, we grew up doing theater. I started doing theater when I was 10 years old. My siblings were doing theater before that. My mom even did a show. My dad did a show. We're all very musically inclined people. And so it seemed like the natural trajectory in my life. And up through, my childhood, through high school, that was very much my mission, was to become a professional performer on Broadway. I envisioned that Tony Award from an early age and set my sights on it, and decided right out of high school to go get my vocal performance degree from Western Washington University up in Bellingham. They have a great vocal performance program that is geared towards opera, but as I always say, that classical skill set that you gain is so transferable to the musical theater scene.
Absolutely.
In terms of like preserving your voice and knowing like the tools and ways to like rest when you need to and how to breathe properly, all those things. So anywho, did my degree in vocal performance and started doing that hustle of going to Seattle, trying to audition, doing all of the circuits. At the same time, I was working at a law firm because during undergrad, I worked for an attorney who is absolutely wonderful. Shout out to Denise George. And her son was doing opera. And so she was so supportive. Anytime I needed to go from Bellingham to Seattle to go to an audition, she was like, go, break a leg, get out of here. She would always come to shows I was in. And so, again, this is all to say my life was building up towards Broadway. I had been interested in politics from like a degree of separation. I'd always been fascinated by it. I was that weird kid who like stayed up late to watch election results come in because it was just a fascinating thing to me. But I never exactly saw myself seriously being in that realm until, and we talked about this a little bit, but there was this moment or year of kind of everything coming to a head, and that was 2016. So I had been, auditioning for a couple of years and was really struggling to break into the theater scene in Seattle, the professional theater scene. In fact, I was pretty much told by one of the theaters that I had already been kind of put in a box and typecasted as this really great singer, but not at all a professional dancer. And so there was very few roles they were ever going to be able to see me for. And that kind of felt like a death knell, if you will.
Yeah.
And it's hard, once you're put in those archetypes, they just don't see you as anything else. And so I pretty much was limited in my pool then of like, okay, what do I do now? How do I break into the theater scene? Because this theater is kind of like S tier for Seattle.
Yeah, for those who don't know, there's
arts.
not a lot of theater in Seattle. Like we have Paramount and Fifth Ave, and like we don't have like the same type of black box theater representation that like a city like Chicago or New York has. So it's really like if you get put into a box for any theater, if you get put into a box in any theater, you're kind of screwed in Seattle. Like
you are kind of screwed. And at the time, I had a really wonderful vocal coach who had been on Broadway, had been a Tony nominee, and she was very much encouraging me to move to New York. She was like, I promise you have the talent, you will get a job. And I was so close to making that jump. I remember I was having a conversation early summer with my dad and stepmom, and it was early summer 2016. And I was talking to them and I said, I'm thinking about doing this thing. It's a huge risk, but I've been told I have a shot and I'm never going to know if I don't take this chance. And they were like, you're right. It's a big risk. But it sounds like you've put thought into this. And if you truly believe this is the risk you need to take to see if you can make it work, then we support you. And so I was starting to look at places in New York. I was getting very serious about moving out there. And then this moment happened in 2016 called the Pulse nightclub shooting in Orlando, Florida. And for those who are unfamiliar, of course, it was the largest at that time, largest mass shooting in the U.S. In a gay nightclub in Orlando, Florida, that claimed the lives of 49 individuals. And I was already kind of, to quote your podcast, in a rut at that time because, shameless plug there, because I was at a point in my life where I was working at this law firm. I was going to these auditions. Nothing was really transpiring. I was living back in Kitsap. I really felt like I was confined and I didn't know where my life was going. And this moment, as dire as it was, kind of became a catalyst for a new trajectory in life where, I reached this moment where I just decided I didn't want to be kind of a passive spectator to injustice, but I wanted to be an active agent for change. And I didn't know what that looked like. I just knew I had more of myself to give. And at that time, it felt like maybe it wasn't in the performing arts, but maybe it was in another way to provide a public service. And so I started looking up grad school programs. I knew I wanted to stay in state because I was already dealing with a lot of student loan debt.
Yeah. And, the shackles of debt.
That's a whole other, whole other podcast episode of the student loan sham. But I digress. I started looking at programs. I shamelessly knew I'd always wanted to be a Husky. For those who don't know, University of Washington, home of the dogs, go dogs.
Represent,
my grandfather had attended, represent. My grandfather had gone to UW, my uncle, my sister. It was a school of like,
your family had some history.
We had some history. Like, it brings the family honor if you go to UW. no shame, no shame to the Cougs.
Not at all.
I looked up, I was like, I don't even know if they have a program in kind of the field I'm looking at, but I started looking. I saw this public policy master's program at the University of Washington called the Evans School. And I just thought, what the heck? I'm going to start reading and practicing for my GRE. At the same time, it's kind of funny. I had a hip surgery in October of 2016. And so I just remember I had like this hip flexor device, and it was like moving my hip and leg for me. And at the same time, I had like this GRE study book on my lap and sticky notes just flying all over. And, I remember going in to take my GRE, like on my crutches, and, turned in my scores, everything, applied to UW in that December, January. And honestly, prior to that, around November, of course, I was even sort of having hesitations of, is this really the right decision? I was getting kind of overwhelmed. I was looking up these programs and going, oh my God, this is like a S tier master's program in public policy. And I am like a B average student. Like
straight Bs.
Straight Bs. I work hard, but I have just never been like a brain.
Yeah.
I surrounded myself with the friends that were, the salutatorians, the valedictorians, but no matter how hard I worked, I was always like the average grade.
Yeah, no one was, let's just say no one was cheating off my homework growing up.
No one was asking me for assistance. And again, that is okay, because we need average folks in academia, like
honestly,
myself.
Average person representation. We love it.
Representation, good heart, right state of mind, not the best student. And it's so weird because, I'm sorry, I'm getting off on a tangent, but I love academia. Like, I love being in academic environments. I love the camaraderie. I love the cohorts, but I'm not an academic by nature.
Yeah.
And so I am like an anxious mess in academia. I am always stressed out. I am like,
have you ever thought of maybe do you think, like, do you like working with people? Is that what it is potentially? Because I'll say that is what I like about academia is like, if anybody listening has ever heard any previous episode, I'm a little bit of an academic skeptic in a lot of big organizations like universities or whatever. But something that I do love about school is like, is the people and working with the individuals, or like, I imagine in a political type space like you were in, it was like just hearing different perspectives. Like, I find that fascinating. I don't know always what I want to do with that information or do necessarily with their perspective but I feel like I always leave with a better understanding of who I am by hearing someone else's thoughts on something. I'm always like, oh, I don't agree with that. Or like, oh, part of that I agree with. Maybe.
It's the people-centered aspect of it that I love. It is like just hearing from different perspectives, different ideas, putting your own input in, just the people aspect for me, more than the study aspect.
Hitting the books.
Hitting those books. But anyways, I was having these hesitations, and then, as we all know, there was a little something that happened in November of 2016 that I think caught a lot of this country off guard.
And you could said that's putting it lightly for a lot of us, at least.
I'm using some light terms here, but that moment really set a disturbing precedent for the next decade that we're right back in. But that moment also solidified for me that I was doing the right thing at the time, because I could see, myself included, as a queer person, there was a lot of fear and anxiety about what it meant for our communities. And I felt, again, that it was a moment that I knew I had something more to give to help the people who are living in fear and to try and help improve their livelihoods in spite of what we were facing. And so went through, of course, with my applications. And then again, this is very interesting where sort of the divergence from theater to public service begins, because at the time, probably in May-ish of 2017, I was waiting to hear back from these schools that I had applied to, and I was auditioning around still, and I actually had gotten a call back, like the first time I'd gotten a call back for Seattle, like a professional theater. And it was for Newsies at Village Theater.
Dude,
and
great show. Honestly, only regret before stopping performing myself. That's like one of two shows that I was like, I wish I could have been in that show before I stopped performing. I'd have been lit.
Literally, I thought for myself, like, if I can get into the show, like, theater's back on, baby.
Yeah, we're back.
It was for, and no surprises again, because, you know, certain theater had already determined I wasn't a professional dancer. And so naturally my callback was for crutchy, and I had a lot of experience with,
that's actually funny. It's hilarious.
With crutches. And so for me, I was like, oh my gosh, this is a dream role anyways. And I made it all the way to the final round of callbacks. It was me and two other guys. Actually, one of them, I had gone to Western with, which was just, you know, surreal.
Yeah.
And it was this moment where literally within days of each other, I kid you not, I got my acceptance into the university, and I learned that I did not get the role in Newsies. And it kind of was this like closing one door and opening another in real time, because I felt like that was maybe this cosmic sort of sign that, you know, this is the right move for now. And so that is really what began the transition over to public service and going back to school and devoting myself fully into the realm of policy and
that
politics.
There's something you brought up that I don't know if I've ever cognizantly like connected before. And I think it is something that's important to establish. Like, first thing I'm going to say is, like, we're not a political podcast. So like, I'm not going to by any means try to like make this inaccessible for whatever political spectrum you're on. But I think something that often gets forgotten, and I hadn't thought of it until you told this story, is like the Pulse nightclub shooting, and Trump being elected. Like, when we talk about like unrest amongst a demographic of people, it's like people on the outside who maybe don't identify with the LGBTQ community need to understand that like this very tragic event happened for the gay community, right? This nightclub shooting happened. And within the year, we elect a president who is actively working against the self-interest or the interests of the people within that community that have already suffered this really huge tragic loss, or this catastrophic event at the time, the most tragic and insane mass shooting event in our country. And you have to look at those from the same lens and ask yourself, okay, maybe is it if you don't agree with the lifestyle or whatever, you have to ask yourself, you could at least understand or empathize with the frustration and the fear that those communities are feeling, given the fact that those two events happen very close together. Of like, someone shoots up a gay nightclub, all of a sudden we have a very, very toxic, crazy psychopath as our president. And
that's, you know, really nice term to use, I would say, for that individual.
And for what it's worth, that's me being diplomatic about it. That's not me sharing my actual feelings, but it's true. Like, you have to understand where that frustration, where that fear comes from. And we went back to back huge slaps in the face of not just the gay community, but people of color, are less fortunate our communities that are financially struggling. Like, these things happen so close together that it's like, it kind of sets the alarm bells in our mind of like, oh shit, like this is happening fast and without any sort of recourse or ability for us to kind of push back. Scary shit.
And
Scary shit.
You know, this may be a bold statement to make. So take it what you will. But, you know, while I don't think Trump was the reason that Pulse happened, I do believe that the vitriol was harnessed by him that allowed Pulse to happen. And that I don't think can be disputed. It very clearly, I think, are pretty aligned. It doesn't take too much thought to realize that this person was harnessing a lot of vitriol and hatred that was harnessed and allowed to be emboldened to the point that people took it out on the communities that they saw as unworthy of existence.
I could not agree more. So it was just funny because you telling that story, I was like, I forget how close those things had really happened to each other. And it's like, well, you wonder why people are fucking mad. That's why.
Right. A lot of whiplash.
Yeah.
So all this, again, this like 2016 to 2026 meme thing that's happening right now. I sound so old being like meme thing, but
you old ass millennial.
I know this. This reflection back on 2016 has actually been really challenging for me because I'm like, oh my gosh, that was not a year that I would like to think back on. And there are not a lot of positive moments that I can reflect on that year because it really was a very, very personally challenging year for me. And yet at the same time, like, as I said, it also was kind of this catalyst for getting me on this new trajectory, and this new trajectory of resilience, which we've had to sort of endure the last decade as well.
Seriously. So we're starting to dive into the political world. You didn't get the show in Newsies, but you got into the program at UW. Changes the whole trajectory. So leading from 2016, because you ran for state representative in 2022 or 21? Or was it 2020?
2020.
God, I knew it was pretty. So, I'll be honest, those like 2 or 3 years like all run together to me. I'm like, I don't even know which way is fucking up.
I think we all.
When it comes to those 3 years. So from 2016, you get into this program. What path do you go on that eventually leads you to running for state representative in 2020?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I don't think I had any plans at the time of moving back to the Kitsap County area and trying to run for a public office of any kind in that realm. When I was going through my studies, my focus was really on, policies that I thought were important to my community. Homelessness, substance use disorder, areas where behavioral health, areas that I really wanted to have a hand in trying to improve outcomes. And it probably wasn't until, 2018, I think, when, it was a year, I think, where a lot of folks were feeling very politically engaged. And I decided to get involved with a local race back home with a candidate, a lovely individual. She's running for state senate. And I wanted to volunteer and help her out. And, we went door knocking through, Mason County, which it's honestly a community I relate with a lot because it is your traditional working class, blue collar community. My dad was a lineman for over 30 years. His dad was a lineman for over 30 years. Like, those are my people in a lot of ways. Yeah. And it was kind of this, internal, fervor, if you will, that when I was doing this, and talking to people and hearing from folks that would say, this is the first time in over a decade that someone's come to my door in this community and had like a conversation. And it really started to kind of like spark in my mind, like, my God, what are our leaders in this community doing? Like, they're not talking to folks. They're not engaging with them on the issues.
I couldn't tell you in the 18 years I lived in Washington who are representatives for what, honestly. I couldn't, if gun to my head, be like, yo, do it or die. I couldn't name a single one, dude. So honestly, I imagine I cannot be the only one in that boat. Cannot.
That is, totally fair. And I think, it's a pretty big boat, I would say, of folks who just, I think there's a lot of folks who are politically engaged around election time. They're paying attention to what's happening at the federal level, but not so keyed into what's happening at their state and local levels. I would say that's maybe changed a little bit in recent years, where folks are starting to be a little bit more keyed into the importance of local elections and the importance that your local communities play in shaping policies, good and bad.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say that there's been more of an interest in recent years. But yeah, I mean, a lot of folks could not tell you who their local representative is, or the county sheriff, or whomever. But anywho, about 2018, the candidate sadly lost, but I still really felt like I gained something from that experience.
Yeah.
And was starting to feel like maybe I do want to go back to Kitsap and start to try and fight for these communities that, to me, were falling behind in a lot of ways. Like if you look at, for example, Mason County compared to the rest of the state, like the socioeconomic, the housing, so many metrics, educational outcomes are just well below the average of the state. And to me, I can't help but make the connection that they had, elected leadership in their community who was not voting in the best interests of their community. And so I had kind of made up my mind that when I was leaving graduate school, I was thinking of challenging one of the sitting members. In 2018, they got really close in the community to flipping 2 of those seats.
Yeah.
And I felt like momentum was on our side.
Yeah, keep it going.
Felt like, I was like, let's keep it up. Let's start putting in the work. Like, these seats are winnable, and folks are clearly like amenable to change. And so I moved back to the district. I got a job. I got a job working at the healthcare authority in January of 2020. And at that time, I remember even asking, when I first started the job, I was like, what do y'all think of this COVID-19? Like, do you think it's going to hit stateside? Like, do you think it's going to,
like, what are your thoughts? Yeah.
Are we in danger, girl? Like, what's happening? And I remember them going like, oh, like, it's concerning, but I just don't see it,
Yeah. We're
really
not worried
mass
about it
spreading
right now.
here. Like, yeah, we're not really worried about it right now. And my Lord, how that changed in the coming weeks.
Yeah. If only we knew.
If only we knew. And, at that point, I had already made up my mind that I was going to run for state representative in that community that year. And I could not have predicted just how different running in 2020 was from my initial plan, because, in Washington, I can't speak for other states, but in Washington, we had a pretty strict regimen around the pandemic. I mean, things locked down. We had very strict guidelines about social gatherings, about, meeting with folks.
I will say that was the perception.
I mean, one of the more strict.
I will say that seemed to be the perception from an outsider too. Like, obviously I still am very well connected with people in Washington. And so like my algorithms are set to keep up on what's going on in Seattle. But like, it did seem that Washington was very quick to the draw of like, hey, this is serious. We're taking this seriously. We're not fucking around with this. Whereas I feel like maybe some others, and luckily Chicago was kind of that way too. Chicago was very quick to be like, yep, we're just gonna, we're gonna do what we're told. We're just gonna ride this bad boy out because we can't afford to be like losing this much money for that long. So we're just gonna do what we need to. But it seemed very much like Washington was that way too.
Totally. And, my partner at the time, he was an educator in South Carolina, and he would tell me when we met, he's like, yeah, we shut down for like a weekend. And that was right back to,
we just wanted a long weekend. We just wanted to, have some time to ourselves, but now we're back.
A little rest, little spritz, and then right back to it. And so, I mean, I was already in the mindset that this was happening. I had hired consultants. I had been building like my website and everything on my own. And so I was like, well, we're committing to this. So by the time I did announce that I was running, it was April. So we were well into lockdown at that point. And I really had to learn like, oh my gosh, we're going to be running a campaign almost entirely virtual. This is I hate using this term because I feel like we use it so much in the last decade, but this is unprecedented.
It's unprecedented. The word of the decade.
Unprecedented. Truly. But it was a very challenging experience because I couldn't go door knock. The state party had pretty rigorous guidelines about gathering. So I couldn't have a kickoff event in person. I couldn't door knock.
A lot of the things that people were expressing that was nice that you were doing, you all of a sudden couldn't. It wasn't in your repertoire of things you couldn't do anymore.
Exactly. And I've always found, one of my strengths is when I'm engaging with a person face to face. I've always been a people person in that regard. And I find even a person who may be diametrically opposed, I find at times that when we are meeting face to face, we can walk away with some level of like cordial conversation. And I at least give them pause or thought. And that just went out the window in 2020. And that was really, really difficult. And so, running a entirely 100% virtual campaign was a unique experience, something that truly in my lifetime, I hope will not be replicated again.
God, I don't know if the millennial generation can handle another one. I think we're capped.
I don't think they could.
We're damn near capped on all of our catastrophic events. We're done. I can't do another one, guys. I'm 30 and it's already been a pandemic, multiple housing crises. Like, dude, terrorist events. I'm done, dude. I'm done.
Recessions. We millennials, we're hurting. We've been hurting for a while now. But yeah, I mean, it was a wild journey, and it was really challenging too, because on those really difficult days of making calls or learning that, this organization was going to endorse your opponent, I didn't have anyone to go to really. I was hunkered down in my apartment. With my thoughts, and it was tough. And, there were definitely high points. I mean, I'd like to say the one debate that I had virtually with my opponent, I kicked his ass.
I'm so glad you said that, because I want you to know I was actually I actually had tuned in to that. I was so. I'm so sorry to break. I'm going to break your story real quick. Just a quick anecdote.
Please do.
I was managing a hotel gym through the gyms that Ron and I work with. We owned a series of like corporate gyms. So like, think of like, in corporate buildings for like amenities for associates and stuff. There was like a whole division. And one of them was in a hotel, which was very odd, but I managed this hotel gym, and it was empty because it was COVID, and gyms were kind of like one of those, like, do not go there during COVID, blah, 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 because of sweat, germs, all things like that. So I'm sitting in this gym alone because I don't have any employees. I'm the only one. I'm the manager. I'm the front desk. I'm everybody because there ain't nobody coming in. And I had my phone propped up with the debate that you were having. Now I remember watching it because, again, no one was coming in, so no one gave a shit. And I was like, Colton whipped that boy's ass, dude. He whooped his ass. I was so psyched. So I'm so glad you brought that up, because I was actually going to say that too. I was like, I could say this because I don't have to worry about being professional. You whooped his ass.
I was feeling so good at that moment. That by far was like the highlight of the campaign, was going into it and just smoking him on every vote he had taken, making him backtrack, making him say, that's, he's distorting my record. And I'd say, well, let's read your record out. Let's talk about your record. Yeah. You have a failing grade from, the Labor Council. Boom. You have a failing grade from the Conservationists. It really was a moment that I felt like, okay, like we can do this. And, for me, the challenge I've really struggled with in kind of pursuing office is there's a lot of ego in politics. People go into politics in times to be somebody, to become somebody, to be elected. And that is what they base their entire career on. And for me, it's like, I have never been in this realm to be somebody. Like, I entered this realm to do something. And that has always been what has guided me and what has led me to make the decisions I have. And I just remember, after the debate, I was riding high And then the primary happened, and people will give me, people will say it wasn't that bad. I mean, I feel like I got smoked.
Sure.
I got about 41% of the vote. And
honestly, it doesn't always matter how other people perceive it. It's about how you perceive it. You know what I mean? Like, I could tell you all day that it was close, 100%. But if that's not how you feel, then it's like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. But
right. That's exactly. I mean, folks are like, Colton, you're a first-time candidate. You're running literally a digital campaign, and you got over 40% of the vote, like in a Republican district, basically.
Yeah, like there's a lot of hope
for
there.
Context for your listeners. Yeah, I mean, for context for your listeners, the district that I ran in, again, it used to be like a pretty Democratic bastion. Like it's part of Kitsap County where I grew up. It's all of Mason County, and then it's like this little hook, cough gerrymandered part of Thurston County. And traditionally, it had been a reliably blue district in the Obama years. And then what we saw beginning in 2016 was this transition away. Trump did very well with these low propensity voters in particularly rural communities, where folks who didn't always show up for elections really showed up, and they showed up for him. And as a result, it was a down ballot approach. And so same situation in 2020. I mean, that district, low propensity voters really turned out. And in Washington, we're a mail-in state. And so our primary results tend to be very reflective of what the general election will look like.
Okay.
Give, maybe 1 or 2 points differential, but normally you don't see big swings from the primary to the general election. Like, the primary is really like a barometer of how well can you expect to do. So for me, after the primary, I knew I wasn't going to win in the general. I knew at that point I can't make up that deficit. It was about, I think at the time it was like maybe a 5,000-6,000 vote differential. And I just thought, like, I can't reach that many people in time to change minds or to turn out.
Yeah.
And I was at a point where, and again, I'm not a politico in the traditional sense. Like, I was really at a point where I thought, I'm just going to drop out. Like, I'm exhausted. This has been really challenging.
Stressful.
The pandemic it's stressful. The pandemic has exacerbated things. And, again, coming from a theater arts background, you are used to like the criticism that can at times feel very personal, because your art is part of who you are. And so a lot of the criticisms feel like an attack on your identity.
Yeah.
And politics is very much the same, where at that, defeat, I really felt like it was really a attack on me. Not an attack, but like trying to think of a word here. But
it felt personal. I mean, it's to your point. To your point, like, you're absolutely right. That we're used to getting that type of feedback in the theater world, and it does feel sometimes like a personal attack in a way. But something that I think makes politics tougher in this case for you versus theater is, like, ultimately we are always, as actors and as performers, a conduit for someone else's vision. And if we as the conduit do not perform the way that they envision it, it's almost like we can still separate ourselves from that and be like, oh, I'm getting a lot of personal feedback and it feels hard to hear, but it's because I'm not interpreting your vision correctly. Whereas in politics, it right. is your belief. These are convictions that you personally have. And if someone doesn't agree with them or in this case pushes back on those and says, I hate you because of what you believe in, it's like there's no wall there to shield you from that. Like, oh no, right. This is me. You have a problem with me.
Yeah,
I'm not a conduit for someone else's politics. I'm a conduit for my own politics, and you hate that or whatever.
Exactly. It really felt like, again, a rejection of me as a person. It felt like, here I am, this 20-something queer kid from rural Kitsap County, and my community rejected me, and it felt like I didn't belong. Which was something that I was trying to fight for, was to give voice for those folks who felt like they didn't belong in that community. And so I was feeling really down. I felt like, I was ready to just contact the candidate and say, like, hey, I'm not doing this anymore. Like, I can't do this. And I was sitting at a pub in Olympia that was like one of my go-to spots. And I remember I was just sitting there kind of ruminating on things. And the owner actually came up to me and he said, "Hey, I just wanted to say, like, my wife and I watched the debate. And all we kept thinking was how much we wanted our kids to grow up to look up to someone like you as their leader." And that was like an immediate switch of this work wasn't in vain. And it really, I told this owner later, like, it really was what stopped me from giving up. I mean, that conversation was, this is bigger than me. This isn't about me. This is about like the people that I'm trying to improve the lives of and the community in which we collectively envision we can be. And so it's really what helped me keep going those last few months. And of course, long story short, I did wind up losing, but, and that was not unexpected. I mean, I fully prepared to lose.
It was an uphill battle for sure.
It was an uphill battle, but I felt like I'm still going to give everything I can until the very end. And there is a lesson I learned that I still carry with me from my friend Darcy, who ran for the other seat. We were running together and she was running against the other member. And I take this lesson with me and apply it everywhere. But she said, "Colton, there was always going to be two outcomes with this. You were either going to win or you were going to learn. So what is it that you are learning from this experience? And what is it that you're going to apply the next time, be it in elected office, in your career, whatever you do? Like, what is it you are learning?" And that has really carried me through, because I learned so much about myself in general and about what I was capable of. But I also learned so much about my community, and I learned so much about what people care about. And I heard their stories, and I heard, the challenges. And it just was, looking back, I don't regret the decision at all to do it. And the only thing I would do differently is don't run in a global pandemic.
Maybe skip that part.
Makes things a little difficult, but I'll skip that part. But everything about it was such a valuable learning experience for myself.
I will say I'm really happy. If I could further amplify the message that couple gave you in the pub, like I want you to know, from Chicago, I was very much following your race too. And I mean, like I said, I was on that call where you whooped that guy. And I it's like I said at the beginning, it's someone, your convictions and your dedication to those convictions and your willingness to speak on behalf of the people that you identify with that for sure live in our community. And I say our community because we're both Kitsap County boys at the end of the day. Like, those people,
yes, we are.
whether you choose to deny it or not, they are there in that community without representation. And I, I'm not gay, so I don't identify with that. But as again, a part of a demographic in a community that isn't very highly represented in that county too, it was really inspiring to see you put yourself out there and fight tooth and nail for your convictions and to fight for representation for people that I really love. Obviously, being a theater kid, it's a very primarily gay community, and those individuals have my heart at the end of the day. Like the struggle, the trials, the tribulations that they have gone through for decades, it is very real, and it's been a never ending battle. So to be able to stand up for them, I was very inspired by your run. I've followed it very closely. I remember when you posted, I think, that you lost. I called my wife. I was like, I couldn't fucking believe it. I was like, Colton fucking lost. I'm like, I'm losing my shit, because it was a slap in the face a little bit. And, I'm very, very glad that there was something still positive to be taken from it. But I figured no better place to tell you that than on this call on air for everyone else to listen to, that I was very inspired by your run. I was very inspired by your run.
Thank you. Thank you so much, my friend.
If anybody from Kitsap County is listening, like, just realize that the degrees of separation between you and a trans individual, a gay individual, in my case, a Latin individual who feels out of place is very small. There's not as many degrees of separation as you might think there is. And someone you love at that, someone you love and maybe just don't realize are gay, lesbian, trans, queer, anything, there are more of them out there than are admitted, but a lot of them are scared to talk about it. And that's not on them. That's on us as a society.
Absolutely. Well, it's really remarkable too, how many of us are in these rural communities. There are a lot of folks, trans, queer, Latin, in Mason County. And to just show up, I think, is important because, for myself now, I live in Seattle where there's an abundance of community. And that's great. But my heart is still in the rural communities. And again, I think one of the biggest takeaways from running was the power of showing up and or of reminding those folks that even in my loss, like, you still belong here. Like, these are our communities too. And it is so important, I think, that we are letting ourselves be known in every part of our communities, because I think there's this notion that, as we're becoming more polarized, of course, like queer communities, we're moving more to the cities, and there's, not as many of us present in the rural communities, but that's just simply not true. I mean, there's a lot of us still existing in rural spaces, and we can't give up on those communities. We have to continue to show up for those communities and to build space and inclusion. So,
and the funny thing is too, is when talking about major cities, because Chicago and Illinois is kind of that way too. Like, Chicago is a very blue city, but it's very surrounding red. And I see the arguments online of like, well, if you're from the city, you just don't get it. You don't get it. And I'm like, I don't know if people always realize how many people in the cities are from small towns like that and do have knowledge and experience of what it's like to live in those small towns, regardless if it is what they're currently doing or not. Like, you and I, for an example, like, you live in Seattle, but we grew up in Kitsap County. Like, I know what that's like. I haven't lived in Kitsap County for 10 years, but like, it doesn't escape me the reality that you guys in small towns are living. But you have to ask yourself, if you don't think any trans, or if you have a very small demographic of those people who are living in your towns, like, to me, you have to ask yourself why that's the case. And it's because they're moving to these cities because of things like security and safety and acceptance. It's not because they don't exist. It's because they were there and they didn't feel safe and left a lot of the time. That's my relationship with Kitsap County. Like, I love Kitsap County, but it was never a place I felt at home at. I was one of like 3 brown families in my whole high school. Like, it was weird times. It was just a means of surviving. It was just, you got to survive and just blend in. And that's not a way to live your life, man. That's not a way to live.
No. No, and survival is such a, accurate way to portray it, because in all my, growing up, I didn't come out until undergrad. So my entire, livelihood in Kitsap County was me living a closeted, fearful life in this rural, suburban military town that I felt exceedingly nervous to come out in, because there were not a lot of people who were like me. And that is something, that is still, even living as my fully authentic self. Like, every time I come back here, there's always that little bit of wariness or hesitation of like, oh yeah, this was a tough area to kind of grow up in.
Or even like having that thought of like, how authentic do I want to be in this moment? Cause like you shouldn't have to be anything but yourself, but also like for self-preservation, you have to have that conversation with yourself. Totally. And it's a sad one to have. It's fucking sad as shit that you have to have that conversation with yourself. And like I said, I'll bring it back. Like, just your convictions and your willingness to fight for them. Those are the things, those are the qualities about people that I find really inspiring. Those are the people that I really love to align myself with and really like support and go out of my way to elevate and heighten, even if it's in a world, in an atmosphere and an environment that I don't for sure know. It's like, I know by your character, I know by what you believe in, I know by how hard you're fighting for what you believe in, that this this is the right thing. This feels right. This feels like this is what we should be moving towards. And so I want to thank you for that, because you're a large part of the reason why I am even kind of interested in the politics that I am, which I will admittedly say is still very small, but still there.
And that's okay.
Yeah. Sometimes I'm just like, I can't handle any more of this. But
oh my gosh. Yeah.
But I know we're kind of getting a little close to time, but there's a couple more questions I want to make sure I ask.
Yes, please.
Inspirations. Did you have any like mentors or even from a grander or smaller scale, both, any inspirations or any people who maybe motivated you down this path that you want to give a little shout out to, and maybe a little bit why?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think one of my biggest heroes, if you will, was Harvey Milk. For those who aren't familiar, of course, he was one of the first openly gay electeds from the state of California. He was a supervisor who was tragically assassinated, but he was always someone who held to his convictions. And one of the most poignant lines that he always said, and it's kind of how I've lived my life, trying to resist fear, is, he used to say, if a bullet should pierce my brain, let it break open every closet door, or burst open every closet door. And that's very much how I've kind of carried myself, is I don't have time to live in fear. There's too many folks who are currently living in fear. So what can I do to help encourage them? What can I do to help them live their fully authentic selves without fear or prejudice? And so, yeah, Harvey Milk has always been a major, just pioneer in my life. And of course, in terms of personal life, my Wawa, my grandmother, was probably the biggest, inspiration in terms of just making me who I am, in terms of empathetic, in terms of just caring about others, having hopefully good morals. She was a major supporter of me in whatever I did. And even though she was not disappointed, but was curious why I was shifting gears from theater to public service, because like many, she felt, why would you ever want to go into that horribly toxic world? But she always believed in me and encouraged me to never give up, to always continue to stand up and fight for what I believe in, to always continue to speak up. And, she passed in the middle of my graduate studies, which was a really challenging and painful time.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I mean, she's continued to be in many ways a guiding light for me. So
I am sure, and obviously I did not know your Wawa, but I'm sure you've made her very proud. And I think to her point, it's a very toxic world, but it's only toxic because we've allowed it to be toxic. And where does that change start? And it starts with people like you who are willing to go out into communities that are maybe not at this current state aligned with yours, but willing to have those conversations. I saw something on social media. I think Bernie Sanders was going to he went to a small town in Arkansas and had conversations.
Oh yeah.
And the relationships that he was building, or people coming to those realizations of oh wait, we're not that different. And it's no, it's just my fellow Democrats just have not spent the time in these cities to connect with you individually, to actually speak on the platforms that they're trying to facilitate. And I'm choosing to do that now. And it might be a little too late, but to see the conversations being had, and I that's how I look at you connecting with the people in Mason County in that level. It's hey, we are not that different. I'm not this scary person that you need to freak out about, because we share the same convictions at the end of the day, at the root of who we are. And I love that is where you seem to have found success early on. Pandemic, fuck that noise, dude. I'm so fucking annoyed that ruined that. But you tapped into something, I think, before we as a country maybe really understood what was needed. And that I have to give you mad props for.
Thank you.
One of my final questions. What does the future look like as of right now? Obviously, it's a little bit like wishful thinking, maybe, or just like, what does the future of you in politics look like if you had a perfect world?
That is a really interesting conversation. What I will say is, I think a lot of us right now are feeling a similar way we did in 2016, 2017, maybe even feeling a bit more despondent. I had a conversation with one of my grad school professors over the summer, and he told me this past year was incredibly tough for him as a professor, where he genuinely didn't know what to tell these aspiring public servants, because it felt like everything we believed to be true had been destroyed, or has been seriously, potentially irreparably damaged. And I just said, what did you tell them? Like, what did you tell them? And for him, he said, I just continued to reiterate to them that to give up in this moment is to cede any hope we have to getting on the other side of this. Because eventually there's going to be a world without Donald Trump. And we have to start thinking about what that world looks like and what we want it to be like. And I think it goes back to why I ran in the first place. It starts in the communities. It starts in having these conversations again, finding where our shared humanity is, where our shared values are, where we can have, disagreements instead of disagreements over someone's existence or their basic, human decencies. And in terms of where that takes me, I'm not 100% settled on that. I tend to try and keep my options open. But for me, I've always just carried myself thinking, where can I do the most good? And I don't know if that's in elected office. I don't know if that's, being a policy director of some agency or department. But I do know that I want to continue to have a voice in this field, and I want to continue to fight for the convictions that I believe in, and the shared values that I think I have with many folks. And wherever that takes me, I'm gonna put my all into it. So
hey, I'd love to hear that, Colton.
Yeah.
Hey, and so this will be the very last thing. For anyone looking to get into state politics, community level politics, regardless of what they believe in or not, what's some advice that you have for someone who is maybe at the beginning of that journey, or maybe unsure, sure if whether or not they want to go down that journey? Any sort of advice that you have for them?
Yeah, I mean, connect with the local org that you have, shared values with. I think people often feel, and I'll admit this has happened to myself as well, where it feels like the barrier to entry is really high. Even just with like your local legislative district party, like it can feel very exclusive in a way, in terms of like having to have a knowledge of like the party apparatus and Robert's rules and this and that. And sometimes it feels like the everyday person just does not have the bandwidth to get involved, or to stay involved. And so for me, I'd say, if you've got a particular issue you're passionate about, like find a local org that's doing advocacy work. Find a way to get involved. Join a local march. Even reaching out to like your local, look up who your local members are, your local representatives, ask to have a sit down, like learn what they believe in and compare it to what you believe in. In my opinion, there's no wrong door with where to start. It's just a matter of like where you want to start and how passionate you are, and where your passion is.
Hey, I love that. Hey, thank you so much, Colton, for joining me on Out of the Rut. Out of the Rut, guys, if you're listening, if you ever have Out of the Rut stories you want to submit, we have our subreddit, Out of the Rut podcast. You could always reach out to us at outoftherut@yahoo.com. Follow us on social, Facebook, Instagram, all the good stuff. Slap a review on there, help the algorithm out. But last thing, Colton, shameless plug time. If anybody had any questions for you to get in touch with you about your story or your politics or how more questions of how they can get involved, how could they reach out to you?
Oh gosh. I am kind of all over the socials. So, you can shoot me a message on Facebook, Colton Myers, the Seattle, Washington plug there. I'm on Instagram, Colton, Colton, M92, I think is my username. Or you can email me, colton.s.myers@gmail.com. And that's Myers, Myers. I know a lot of folks like to put that extra E in there, but
not about it.
It's just, we're not about it. We're not about that extra E life. So,
hey, well, thank you very much again. And listeners, as always, you have a fantastic week. We will catch you next time on Out of the Rut.